Now I just wish that stupid door would shut up.
No kidding.
Door, do you have any opinions on Narnia today?
Apparently not. Okay. That being said, Door,
Okay, welcome, friends.
welcome back to Friends of Disney.
To today's special guest, Door.
Again, it's the door. We don't know how to make that door shut up. It's like motion censored. It keeps like locking / unlocking, and it's irritating. But
Today's setting is a little bit more
it's a little bit different. We got
luminescent.
some more new equipment and stuff. So a little bit better lighting and stuff. Not so much down lighting, because beforehand the light was right there above us, and it was, well, not that great.
Let's not go into a whole Markiplier thing and get off topic about Markiplier on his podcast has a big habit of continuing to talk about drives,
About what?
computer drives and storage
Yeah.
for his movie.
Okay, fine, be that way. Today's episode is a little bit of a different episode than what we've been doing, I want to say. We're gonna be talking about Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which clearly, again, Megan's gone. It's just that point in the pregnancy. At this point in time, she's a month out from her due date, and it's just
Everything's uncomfortable.
and she's just not doing so great, and she's miserable. So we're coming up on her last episode. And
Hopefully
stuff
she can make her last episode.
before maternity leave. Yeah, hopefully. I mean, next week's gonna be her last episode, so stay tuned before she goes on maternity leave. She will be back though.
The question is how long?
Yeah. Before we get into Narnia, I just want a casual reminder of we're working on trying to get you guys a giveaway. So make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once we get to 200 subscribers on YouTube, we'll release out a giveaway with some pretty awesome prizes.
Yes.
So make sure you subscribe, like, ring the bell, all the fancy things. It feels weird to say. It still does.
And follow us on Instagram and TikTok and
check out our Patreon.
yes.
I won't lie, there's nothing on it right now, but that's mostly just because no one's there, and so it feels like an empty void.
And our Patreon is where we will show some of these exclusive items for the giveaway.
Yep, and as well as some exclusive behind-the-scenes footage of our shenanigans.
Yes. Speaking of which, should child's gambling go on there?
If you're wondering what child's gambling is, you'll have to find out on the Patreon within a bloopers video. No, so Narnia. I don't even know where to begin. Like, what are your overall thoughts on Narnia? The first Narnia.
Okay, here is my opinion about Narnia. It sets a baseline of fantasy books I like to read, where you're off in the normal world and then you go off into a magical realm or, you know, a different realm than the one you live in. And yeah, it's just kind of like a baseline of what I like in fantasy.
See, it's interesting that you bring that up, because for me, it's like, if I think of a fantasy book in like fantasy world, Narnia is the one I go to. Not Harry Potter, weirdly enough, not Lord of the Rings, not like Game of Thrones-esque. It's Narnia that I think of, because Narnia, it just has a very different feel. Like, it's adventurous, but not in the same way that like The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings is, you know?
It's just the storyline for me, you know, like Earth found someplace, new realm, and then they have roles in the new realm.
Well, and like, well, for me, it's like
Oh, and a prophecy. Prophecy is a big, big
there's
part of.
always a prophecy.
I love prophecies.
Well, something I love about the Narnia world is that the creatures in it aren't made to look almost gross, except for those that are meant to be gross.
Yeah.
Like, in a lot of fantasy movies, they try to like make everything hyper realistic, and for some reason that means making them look gross. Like the fawns were so playful, the centaurs looked so majestic and cool. And like you had the dryad, like the gal that was like made of flowers and
Hmm.
stuff. Like it looked so magical and happy and lively, and not just like the regular, like ugly, demonic orcs and giants type deal.
Unpopular opinion. I hate how the Ice Queen looks.
Oh no, I agree.
Like, people think she's like pretty majestic looking. It looks tacky to me.
I would agree with that. Well, it's less taxi and just more unappealing, you know?
The fur thing with like this heavy coat is,
And the weird hair
yeah,
that looks like it's shooting out of her head.
it looks too stiff.
Yeah. Um, I so something I can't help but think about with this movie is overall how it looks. This came during basically I know everyone points to like the 90s as like the a most amazing era for Disney. But I think this movie appeared like it was like a late 2000s movie, so like right before 2010. And I
Mhm.
think that era was quite literally like Disney's peak, in my opinion. Like the CGI was great. Like that movie looks amazing.
I mean, not to give some discredit, but like the 90s is when good movies did come out too. Like, I think not just for Disney, but
Yeah, the 90s had a lot of advancement in the film industry world.
sorry, I don't mean to how do you turn this off?
Oh, I kind of liked it on.
Oh, I don't know how. We'll worry about it later.
But like, no, like I remember seeing like because I remember like watching DVDs and you remember that scene like that one like little commercial where it was like where it would start with Jack Sparrow like we have our heading, here we go.
Hmm.
That commercial.
Hmm.
Like I remember that commercial so distinct because it showed like Lucy like opening the wardrobe and like how Disney really like owned up to all of their movies and how wide they were. Like this was a huge part of Disney when this came around the time that this came out. Like they owned it 100%. It was an amazing world that they brought to life.
Isn't this movie also based from a book though?
One of many books, because it's the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
So there's like I think it's like 8 books, with technically the first one written being The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Hmm.
But after all the books came out, I forget the author. He created a prequel book called The Magician's Nephew,
Hmm.
which fun fact, the magician like the one that book is about like involves like the creating of the wardrobe,
Hmm.
which was the professor in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Hmm.
He was actually the weird thing, and this is the one thing I don't like about the world of Narnia, or at least the series, is that you don't it's not like the Harry Potter series where you're following Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings where you're following like the Fellowship going to Mordor and stuff.
Hmm.
It's about Narnia, and so the character focus shifts throughout the entire series because in this movie you have the 4 kids. After the second movie, Peter and Susan are no longer in the book, like are no longer at the forefront, even in the books. They go away.
Hmm.
And then it's Lucy,
And then
Edmund,
Edmund.
and then someone else. And then after that, after the Don Treader, I believe, they go away. So the 4 original kids aren't even part of the story, but it still continues on.
Hmm.
And that's the one thing I don't like is that it changes the characters throughout the book to where it's not even by the end of it, it's not even like the first one anymore.
I was like,
I
not gonna lie, I haven't read the books.
I haven't either, but I've done a lot of research in him because if you don't know about Narnia, it is a giant allegory to biblical themes and aspects. Aslan is obviously God slash Jesus and stuff. The White Queen is personified to be Satan, um, and a bunch of other things within that. And so when I was rewatching it, I was doing a lot of research into like the symbolism because I wanted to know more about like where the Christian faith like overlined and stuff,
Hmm.
you know, and like what these movies were trying to be about in the story of Narnia and everything. And spoiler alerts if you haven't read the books, at the end, very end of the books, apparently like all the characters come back. So like Susan, Peter, Edmund, Lucy all show up in the end book. The professor, whose name is Diggory Kirk, shows up in the last book as like those who get to go to like the new Narnia and stuff, which obviously is similar to like the new creation and stuff. And Susan's not because she stopped believing in Narnia and stuff. But like it's a giant allegory of Christian faith, and so I was really interested in seeing like the overlap of like what I always knew the story to be and how understanding like the biblical themes highlights the story.
You now talking about this now makes like a lot more sense about kind of um Lucy and um children, and their devotion or, child presence that gives them purity, that blindness of faith.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. It's really interesting to see because I didn't I didn't consider so I grew up with no faith at all. Like I wouldn't even consider myself atheist. It was just nothing. I didn't have a sense of faith at all or what not to believe in. And so when I became in high school, when I got to high school and stuff, I had some friends and stuff that actually ended up introducing me to the Christian church. And at the time, I had considered myself a Christian. And so I was doing a lot of learning about the Bible, but I never connected it with Narnia
Mm-hmm.
until I got to Whitworth. And I learned about the overlap between Narnia, like the author who wrote Narnia, and the Bible. And then, even though I no longer consider myself a Christian, it's still interesting to now see like those things I learned from the Bible now in the story that I had no issues with them, but now I'm realizing how much more I like the story,
Mm-hmm.
knowing some of the more undertoned themes of like where it's like pulled from, you know, because it adds a whole nother layer to the story. It doesn't ruin the story or change the story because I was able to understand the movie just fine, even without the knowledge of the Christian themes.
Mm-hmm.
But it adds another layer that gives it real depth.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I mean, I consider myself to be Christian, more specifically a part of the Lutheran um community of Christian faith. And I grew up Lutheran as well. It's kind of funny though, because I'm Lutheran and typically go to non-denominational churches just because the vibe is better there. Um, but Lutherans really give a lot of praise to their children for just being a child, that they're wholeheartedly with God
Mm-hmm.
and just being a kid.
Yeah. Well, and, like that's what Lucy's like supposed to represent because she's the youngest, you know, and she really pushes that like she's meant to represent that childlike faith, you know, that it just makes everything is so simple.
Hmm.
Adults like to complicate things when they don't need to. Like you see it all the time in the beginning of the movie because like Lucy's trying to tell them like, oh yeah, there's this world in the world. And she goes, no, that's not logical.
Yeah.
Susan's pushing logic, and the professor's like every time they run into him, he's like, I don't even think like you wouldn't believe us even if we told you. He goes, try me. keep an open mind. Like it's doesn't have to be so complicated, which a lot of people like to make a lot of things complicated, like even beyond faith, you know?
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be so complicated. Like that phrase of like it's easier said than done. It's like sometimes it is that easy. But what's your favorite part of the movie? I'm curious.
It's a good question. Oh, I wouldn't say I necessarily have a favorite part of the movie. Um,
You have a part that you dislike?
yeah, with like the Queen and the Lion.
The stone table.
Yeah.
You know that's supposed to be an image of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Want to know what my really favorite part is? Because it irritates me to no end.
Hmm.
The scene with Mr. Tumnus and Lucy at the beginning, where they're like at his house and he like gives her tea.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me pissed off.
Why?
He manipulated her.
I was like not gonna lie, when you said that, um, that did kind of bother me a little bit of kind of Lucy unknowingly. I thought of child kidnapping.
It's what he was doing. 100 because basically it took me a little bit of research to fully understand that scene because not everything can be translated well to a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that scene, he like him luring her, like, oh yeah, come back to my place. Here, have some tea. You want to hear a lullaby. He's trying to get her to fall asleep so he can bring her to the White Witch, Jadis. And that's what makes me so angry because like Maggie was like, oh, I love Mr. Tumnus, he's so great, and I'm like, he manipulated and was going to attempt to kidnap that child, and it wasn't until that roar in the fire that was meant to be an allegory of like in Christian terms of like God intervening, like Mr. Tumnus got that reminder of Aslan and the Holy Spirit and God and stuff, and it scared him straight basically. And that's why he didn't ended up not doing it, but he had full intention of doing so otherwise. If it weren't for Aslan, Lucy would have been screwed and the whole movie would have ended. Woohoo.
I feel kind of bad for Edmund in this movie, though.
I do too.
He's in a conflicting stage in his life where he's entering um that kind of adolescence, pubescent type of era of his life, I feel like just entering that teenage portion, beginning to enter there. And he's really coming into conflict with um the relations of his siblings and people around him because he meets the queen, and she's really nice to him at first. And Lucy had Mr. Thomas, and he was just like, well, the queen was nice to me. And but Lucy had mentioned, that the queen is not nice. And he has a lot of distrust in his family because of kind of how poorly they treat him.
Well, and he definitely like I definitely agree on the conflicting spot because this movie takes place during World War II,
Yes.
right when um Germany is bombing Britain every night, and they
And it
just
looked like parents were sending their children off to.
that was a real thing that happened. They ended up uh in Britain. They ended up having children shipped out into the country for safety, so that way no children were hurt. And in the beginning of the movie, like Edmund runs back into the house when they're on their way to the bomb shelter to retrieve a picture of their dad. And it shows how Edmund is in a really tough spot. Like he cares, he loves his family, loves his dad, and he doesn't have that leadership male figure in his life. Next up is Peter, and Peter, I'm gonna say through no fault of his own, trying to step up, but he's kind of being an ass about it.
He's
Uh,
definitely the older sibling.
yeah,
It's very clear.
okay, don't give me crap like that. I'm the older bro, okay? Don't even.
Okay, I'm the oldest and the youngest, but I've never met my brothers, so I'm just an oldest.
I'm the oldest brother, so you're not wrong, but also don't call me out.
Well, sorry.
But like, no. And so he's getting angry. He's has no one to really look up to. Peter is being a senior in high school vibes and being an ass. And
He meets the queen who's just like, you
he's
can be a king.
he's nice.
Yeah,
She's nice to him. She gives him she makes him feel important.
yeah.
While all the others don't treat him as such. He's the redheaded stepchild. Because Lucy gets all the attention because she's the baby. Peter, he's the oldest. He's the one in charge.
He's essentially the middle child syndrome.
Yep. And it sucks for him. And you can see that like when they meet the beavers and everything, that even Edmund is like, well, who says that you're right? Like the he can't mentally deal with that fact of, oh no, this person who was nice to me is actually wrong and is manipulative, you know?
But at the same time, it's not like he really got to witness, another side of her because he did get to meet her first. And so he's judging off of his first perception of her.
Turns out first impressions are important.
Yes. Um, and he hadn't got to have like many other introductions with her in group settings to see this other side of her. So he is fully judging her on his first impression that he got from the queen, which, for him is very much she's nice. Like the facts that they are claiming did not match up to what he had acknowledged at that time
Yeah.
until his second meeting with her.
Yeah, where she literally threw him in the dungeon. And I'm sur- I'm surprised he didn't get more punished by her over the fact that he kept withholding information. Like, I don't know where they're going. Something about a beaver dam. Oh wait, they're heading to Aslan. Like there was oh wait, there's an army. Like there was like he would give a little bit of information.
I think he was holding just the like not that I was okay with it, but he was holding just the right like giving in just enough to make her keep going forward. But at the same time, he really shouldn't have been saying those things. And
He shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. But I think what I'm surprised is that he didn't get more punished by her
yeah,
for the continuing withholding.
because that would piss someone off. Just like, I know you fully have more information. Tell me all the information
Like
now.
like he wasn't lying about the beaver dam, but he could have just gone skipped over the beaver and say Aslan's camp. Skip the whole middle ground part, you know? But he kept withholding. It's like, oh yeah, beaver dam. You lied. Where are they at? Oh, something about Aslan?
Something about the Stonehenge.
Something about the stone table and stuff. And like I would be pissed off. I was like, why didn't you tell me that from the beginning? You said you didn't know anything. You know?
Yeah.
Like as a villain character, you would I know that's a movie, and so it's made to be this way, but like you would think as like a villain character, you would have connected those dots of like,
It's kind of annoying because the book I'm reading now, one of the characters is kind of in a similar situation. It's the twin sister's older brother, and in the book I'm reading, everyone has like potential to see the future, you know, see people's outcomes, but they can also like read star signs, and everyone also is like a certain type of fae. Everyone also has a magical element to them. There is a lot of fun things in this book. But the older brother is the best seer in the land. And right now in the book that I'm in, they're in the middle of a war. And Lionel, he's the big meanie in the book, um, stole the twin sister's older brother so that way he could cast more accurate visions of who's going to win this war. And anyways, um on top of him not like also being able to see the future, he's also able to like see little aspects of like everyone and everything. And so he is purposely trying to like distract his mind to think about other people's futures that's not related to the war, so that way he like doesn't cast a vision that will help Lionel, but at the same time he has the full knowledge knowing the prophecy that the like, and he's seen the prophecy play out for the whole future of basically who's going to win, but not at that point yet, just what the sisters need to do in order to win and fulfill the prophecy.
Yeah.
And Lionel is trying to get that information out of him. And so he's just been torturing him. And it's just kind of annoying because the older brother, Gabe, is just like, here's a speck of information for something diverted to this similar situation, but not the full thing.
To go on a different topic. Sorry, I had no knowledge of the book, so I'm like, yeah, okay.
No, that's fair. I mean, if anyone's read Zodiac Academy and you're on book 8, I think you'll know what I'm honestly, if you're at like book 7, 6 or 7, I think you'll know what I'm talking about anyways, but if you're at book 8 with me, you'll definitely know what I'm talking about.
But no, me and Megan had one little theory that's kind of a little grotesque about this movie.
Hmm.
You know how during the big battle at the end of the movie, the queen is like, the witch is like wearing like a very different outfit than she wears throughout the rest of the movie, and it has like that fur on it.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Megan think that that's Aslan's fur that they shaved off.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Like, it makes sense considering you look at the world that she's in. Like, she wouldn't kill an animal for necessarily for those furs, considering she only kills people by turning them to freaking stone.
Which is really like, are you killing them?
Well, in Aslan's book, no.
I was like,
I mean, he sits there and he just goes, and then they're back to life.
yeah.
Oh, but I love, I love that battle scene. In all honesty, I thought the effects were, again, I can't get over the effects because it was so seamless. You know, like I look at Aslan and I look at the live action Lion King,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to know what changed and degraded because Aslan looks so big and majestic. Like he's almost what I would think Mufasa looked like,
Yeah.
you know? But none of the lions look like him, and he looks like a normal lion, you know? And it has this seamlessness to it where it's like, yeah, there's real world aspects. Those are human kids that they're filming. But then they also have these like CGI creatures like the griffins and Aslan and the centaurs, but it all looks so seamless. Like,
I was like, not gonna lie, I really like how well Mr. Thomas was
mhm,
made.
the effects were just so good. I want to know if that was like completely CGI or if it was almost like prosthetics, like prosthetic makeup and stuff.
I think a good portion of it is prosthetics, because CGI was not really like a big thing.
Mm.
Like it was introduction, but it wasn't like as perfected.
But that's the thing, and we don't know if it was perfect. It feels to me like it was degraded because Aslan has to be completely CGI,
Yeah.
but he looks fine. There's no issues there. He doesn't look out of place.
Well, and I think you can definitely like there's certain things that are definitely CGI, but like you can also create like that forest scenery pretty easily in a studio setting.
Well, hell, and a lot of places, like once upon a time, the film, like all the forest stuff was real forest, like
Yeah.
recorded in a forest.
I
Which,
mean, I don't that snow looks a little too fake.
oh, duh.
Yeah, I was like, I think
Well,
that was more of like a man-made forest type of thing.
but still, like the effect work on this movie was so pristine that it makes me wonder what went wrong. Because I think about other movies that came out around that time. That's when National Treasure came out, and the movie quality looks just fine. You're not really like, oh no, that's a bad, like that looks terrible. Like it looked great. The Griffins looked great. Like especially like that scene where they're like flying over and they like drop in the rocks and
Mm.
everything. The costumes with like the Minotaur and the Cyclopses in the background and stuff. Like all of it looked great.
I was like one thing with like prosthetics, like especially for Mr. Thomas's legs, those are actually decently not hard to make.
I know.
Um because it's essentially like wearing silicone pants like you would if you were wearing a mermaid's tail, and then adding the fur on that and stuff like, and then just kind of seamlessly blending it into his stomach area, and then he could have had other um prosthetics that gave him that goatee beard and
Yeah.
um
A lot of makeup stuff.
yeah. Oh, I was like, a lot of this is gonna be like cosmetics when you look at the characters.
But it's one of those things where it's like if they tried to do that through CGI, it wouldn't look right. Like I think back to like looking at looking at Beast in the live action Beauty and the Beast, that was all CGI. But imagine how that would have looked if they did it like same level if they did this movie.
Mm.
That would have looked even better to me personally. Because there's
Yeah, because
something about
didn't
that physical makeup that makes it feel more seamless and cohesive as an environment.
I was like, because the guy who played the Beast in live action Beauty and the Beast, didn't he basically just wear one of those suits that tracks like his mouth movements? And because that's how movies nowadays are
That's
done, because they wear these suits that
it's
analyze their movements.
for the movements and it gets all replaced with the CGI.
Yeah, because that's how Avatar was done. Now, I love Avatar. I think it's great.
We'll really need to review Avatar.
I think it's great. I love the Blue Monkey people. I love Pandora. It's great. I think they did a really good job with that introduction to that type of filmmaking. Um, because like they're not trying to make like something that's bigger than the body, you know? Essentially, the blue monkey person is the same figure as the actual human, which that makes that pretty easy to translate over of how to make those type of films.
Yeah, versus the Beast, which is very animalistic, not
Yeah.
human. And
So you now then have to add layers to the beast of like, how is this bicep going to move with his real bicep, you know?
yeah, it creates a lot more work, but it also detaches from the physical environment. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a big problem with a lot of CGI films is that they use so much that it no longer feels real. Like I don't know the better way to explain. Like obviously none of it is real, but like
It
it,
feels more realistic in Narnia,
it feels way more realistic in Narnia.
including the animals. I gotta admit, like, can we get more of those animals when we make these live action movies?
Hmm. That's the thing. It's like it feels cohesive.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel almost fake. Like there's a point where like it feels fake.
yeah.
It's not even. It
Like if
doesn't.
we were to go in this realm today,
It would. It You could have like I would 100% believe it
Yeah,
because those look like centaurs to me, plain and simple.
they're not like they're not animated and like cartoonish, but real life cartoon, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
They're not like,
it's not overdone.
yeah.
Like I we know what we're trying to say. We just
Yes.
can't put it into words. If you can have the words, please let us know because I think you guys kind of understand what we're trying to say.
Like we're describing everything about it, but not giving it a specific word. On a different side note, I was gonna switch over to kind of like um I was like, while we're talking about filmmaking processes, made me think of because I watched one on Tangled, and because Tangled was the first time where they had each strand of hair like
They
individually drawn for its
they
animation.
had to develop new like technology and software just to make her hair because it was proving to be so difficult.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I was
Mhm.
like completely different movie, but like it's pretty cool.
I think it is really cool, especially since Tangled was the first princess movie to leave the two-dimensional world
Hmm.
and like hand-drawn animation. It was computer generated in 3D.
Yeah, and they had to track the animations of her hair and like they put a lot of effort into that movie.
Oh yeah, and I think that's something that is so special about Disney's movies is you see the work that they've put into. And I don't want to say it's been lost in recent movies because there's definitely been some innovative stuff happening. Like in Wish, that style was
They brought in
honestly
a different style
it
with
was a
Wish.
really cool style of animation that I really liked. But
I mean, when in I would say the in between stages of Bob Iger not being the CEO and being on the chair is that lost period of Disney because they definitely during that transition of leadership went into a different era where you could see the lack of effort and lack of quality.
and lack of creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that Bob Iger's back, I mean, we've seen it with D23. The game is being stepped up again.
Yeah, and they put a lot of effort of let's decrease output and increase quality.
Yeah.
And that was something that I think that Bob Iger had announced that they were shift a model they're shifting to last year of let's stop trying to just output as much as possible. We need to make high quality films.
And I mean, especially last year when I did my economic report on Disney, this was right as Bob Iger transitioned back into that leadership. Looking at their financials, they were spending more money making the movies than they actually were
Bringing in,
bringing in. Yeah. And it's just kind of like they were losing money.
yeah,
And it shows in their headlines because their headlines was, they lost it. They had to get rid of employees for those mistakes. And um, I really, really hope though that they redo the parks on flow of because I do not like Genie Plus.
there has been some work on the park stuff. Like they don't call it Genie Plus anymore. It's now just Lightning Lane, and there's been some like work around that area.
I was like, I really hope that gets fixed because when I went to Disney World, there was a big flaw in that, and it was like essentially at 7 a.m., you have to get on that app as soon as possible if you want to get on certain rides. Otherwise, you're not going on it at all.
Yeah. Megan and I, when we were in Disneyland, we decided that we almost never used it. We only used Genie Plus, the service, for our last day in the park, just so we can like revisit rides we wanted to ride again and stuff. And otherwise, we if there was like specific rides we really wanted to go on, but like wait time for too long and everything else, we would just buy like a quick lightning pass for both of us and just go one off. Other
I was like, I went with my grandma though, and I hate to say it, but it's hard to do these new moving things with the boomer generation. I love my grandma wholeheartedly. But next time I go to Disneyland or Disney World, I'm going with my friends. Yeah. Which should be January of 2026.
Thanks for the heads up.
That's when I am assuming I can save up enough money for us to go. So,
Yeah.
um,
But anyways, back to Narnia.
I was like, you want to stay at an Airbnb? I also need to talk to my grandfather. Just sorry, I got on a side tangent, but I'm just like,
Well, and I think a side tangent is valid here. Again, like we're talking about where this movie stood in Disney history compared to now. Because again, 2010, what issues with Disney? They're outputting great things.
yeah,
I mean, you had Tangled, which came out around the same time as this movie.
yeah.
Princess and the Frog. Um, Frozen came out a few years later in 2013. So you figure,
When we're looking at, I mean, as we're talking about this, and we've talked about kind of like now realizing like this was a time that they were playing around with creativity of how to make these movies.
yeah, and it's clearly this franchise was a very valuable franchise since they made 3 movies in the series. And something that's irritating with film companies is when they have a movie idea and it does well, they try to make another one and increase the budget.
Normally, the second movies just don't do better.
They generally don't. And then, but the thing is, the thing is, they go too far.
Mm-hmm.
They get too caught up on their own success and they go too far. Like, we'll probably talk about this come Christmas time, but like the Santa Claus movies, there was 3 of them. First one and second one have a special heart to them as to why they did well. The third one, completely different vibe, and it ruined the franchise. Tim Allen has said it. They caught.
I was like, isn't the third one with Jack Frost?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Tim Allen said it. They got too caught up in their own success, and it screwed them. And I know Greta. I think her name is Greta Gerwig, the gal who made Barbie.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna be making a new Narnia series with Netflix, and it's one of those things that's like if you're trying to create a big world, you can't get too caught up on your own success. Like the Harry Potter movies are very linear. They didn't get too ambitious. Granted, they were following a prescribed story, but look at what happened with Narnia.
Well, also, most of the time when movies from books go into movies, typically the author is there, especially in the making of Twilight. She was even in the wedding for Belle and
He
Edward.
was in the first movie too.
Yeah,
Actually writing the final book.
yeah.
And like Percy Jackson, that was a big hole. Was that um can't remember his name, Rick Riordan. He wasn't really part of the 2 Percy Jackson movies, and he's not a fan of them. And now that's why we have the series with him writing the series
Yeah.
itself. You know,
And then um for the Adams family, didn't
Addams Family is a different animal because Addams Family's movies have been remade constant, like so much.
yeah, but like that one was kind of unique because it was like Tim Burton who like he's been picking out people who are going to fit his
Talk about the Wednesday show.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He's been specializing character, and I mean, I feel like now Jenna Ortega is just the goth girl of
yeah. But no, like when film companies get too ambitious, which in all honesty Disney's a little guilty of.
This makes me curious now about the Divergent series. Sorry. Oh.
Because you look at their live action movies, a lot of them are misses. Some are good, like Cinderella was good, Lady and the Tramp is good, Beauty and the Beast, I would relatively say is on par with the animated, just the animated one's a little bit better. As you can check out in the other video where we do our live action DIY, like live action versus animated comparison. Um, but no, Disney got way over in their heads when they just you see what you did right and you just try to replicate it. Don't change. You know? Did I lose you?
No, I'm definitely paying attention to you. I got on a side tangent and I had to find out because, um, so I just read it though. The Divergent series, have you ever read those books?
I haven't read the books. I've seen the first movie.
Just stay on the first movie till you read the books. Um, but the Divergent series, like, I loved the books except for the last one. I threw it down the stairs. uh, but the movies were so far different from the books in terms of the timeline and certain scenes. And so, like, I just wanted to see if the author was helping produce these movies. She was. And now I'm a little pissed about it. Because, like, one thing that was really concerning with Triss was her intimacy with Tobias, because intimacy was something she was afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
It was a legitimate fear. And it doesn't even happen until the third book. And then second movie, it happens.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Um,
Because I kind of liked that idea, you know. It's just like her and Tobias, you know, and
so
they're fighting against the world. It was cute. I don't know.
um do you think that this movie is a little crazy to be owned by Disney? Because you look at the scene, like the stone table scene.
Not gonna, I mean, yes, yes, no. I think when I first watched the movie, I never actually associated it with Disney. I always kind of associated it more with like Paramount or Fox
That makes sense. Because it looks like one of their movies.
or Lionsgate, you know?
Yeah, because it looks like one of their movies.
Yeah.
But the fact that this is a Disney movie,
I was like, definitely not DreamWorks.
no. Like, I don't know, when we watched the stone table scene, I was just sitting here like, holy crap, this is
I was like,
well done for Disney.
yeah, I was like, that table scene is not something that Disney would generally try to produce.
No, you literally watched a lion get sacrificed, basically. And obviously it's oh yeah, he came back to life. Woohoo, Jesus character, quite literally.
Yeah.
Um, but you figure that was just really dark.
Yeah.
I mean, you tied him down, you shaved him, and then full on stabbed him with a knife.
Shamed him, or not shamed, but shamed, but not shamed. What is,
Humiliated.
yeah, kind of degraded him with shaving of the fur. Um,
Humiliating.
yeah, that loss of power, and
Yeah. Like it's a interesting scene to watch. It's a powerful scene to watch, but interesting nonetheless.
for children, that's terrifying.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
Megan was telling me that she used to cry and actually run out of the room whenever that scene came on because she hated it.
I mean, this also kind of now is a question of who is the audience for this movie then? Because I personally feel like this is like more acceptable for teens.
Agreed.
Children should not really be watching this.
I agree.
I think especially with the Mr. Thomas.
Mm,
I don't think a child should watch that for that reason. Because child kidnapping is something that's very serious.
agreed. And
And we don't want Because a lot of tactics that, adults are going to try and use with children is, like go and approach them at a park, or something,
Yeah.
and um be nice like Mr. Thomas, and offer you something, and it's very appealing to children, and this is why we have child trafficking, and
I
so
think
I don't think a
I
child
agree.
should watch this.
Well, and like I was speaking as someone that again, like you and Megan grew up Christian.
Yes.
I did not. And so watching this with that special like lens that I have in mind as someone who was on the outside and came in, I genuinely think that in a teaching aspect, this movie would be very good in like well, this movie
To kind of
series
teach biblical theme.
to help teach and understand what faith and things like that look like. Because and I'm especially bridging between the first and two movies because first movie is obviously an introduction type of movie and you learn basic themes. Oh yeah, Jesus died and came back like Aslan did. He sacrificed himself to save people. He came back and was able to save people who had died and brought them back and defeated the witch, aka Satan. Very basic themes, and that helps to visually understand that idea. And then you go to the second movie, which is all about faith. And you understand the hardships of faith and visually see how that can be tested and tempted and how scary that can be. And
I feel like Edmund shows like a good kind of testimony though for someone entering faith.
he's the Judas character. He's the one who sold out Mr. Tumnus. He sold out everything.
Yeah.
He was the one who did the wrong. He's the Judas character, and Aslan went and saved him. And so,
It still shows that like he can be forgiven though, even though you have done wrong.
well, and that's the thing. It like I heard this quote once, and it kind of stuck with me a little. Uh, the fact that forgiveness is the central theme of Christianity, and thus is a very big part of the story
Yeah.
for this movie, shows that it's less about rules and
I was like,
fit
I've
more
been
to the story.
I was like, I've been talking to, sorry about the Christian topic. If you are it's just kind of interesting though.
It's an interesting topic, and the thing is, this movie is heavily based on it.
But I've been talking to someone about Christianity, and kind of like just kind of theories. And with what I've learned at Whitworth, and things like that. And I just find it kind of interesting, for the forgiveness part of Christianity, because I do believe that if you do wrong, there is still a chance for you to be forgiven, because from what I've learned, that wrongdoing is a lack of knowledge or a lack of, um, that relationship you have built with God, so you're drifting away from it, that is causing you to make that decision. And I think, as you get closer to building your relationship back with God, there's always forgiveness and grace.
Mm-hmm.
Especially as it comes to your own repenting of what you did, because you can finally have that knowledge of that action you had made was wrong for X, Y, and Z, as you put more of your trust and faith in God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also know you and Megan are not you're not religious anymore. I mean, not,
It's a complicated issue for us.
yeah, I was like, it's not that you don't believe in God, it's just not Christianity.
It's at best agnostic. At best,
Yeah.
right now.
I was like, last episode with Megan, I mean, we got into a topic afterwards about the afterlife.
You guys always talk about the afterlife.
Because it's so interesting. Because I'm just like, I do think that, we do go into like a placeholder type thing, because we are not like, we're not perfect people, but like, and if sin is like, in my opinion, if sin is a lack of relationship with God and you die at a point, where you haven't built that full relationship yet, like I kind of feel like you go into a temporary placeholder while you learn to rebuild that relationship until you're ready.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I don't think everyone is just like, you die, you're fully accepted, but I mean, God is going to accept you regardlessly as one of your children, in my opinion. But in a way, it's kind of like you need to be able to learn and accept that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And humans have desires, which is
Okay, Lucifer. Sorry, I get like
sorry to make this very biblical, but it's just
it's the central part of the story
the themes are interesting.
because like it's not even like analytical reading where it's like, oh, this is a Jesus character. Like, no, Aslan is meant to be
Jesus.
Jesus. Like
Jesus.
that's what the writer was intending there. I don't remember his name for some reason. C.S. Lewis. That's what it is. C.S. Lewis. Um, but a couple more things still before we end up wrapping up because we're already 50-ish minutes, almost an hour. Did you know that there was controversy around Narnia?
Oh,
Because some people were angry at it because it's biblical themes and teachings and
mhm.
references in the Bible and literal references to the Bible.
And they didn't want that
But
preached on their children.
no, it was also the combined use of pagan stuff of the
Mm,
mythical creatures and magic and stuff like that. Because a lot of hardcore Christians are like, no magical TV, no Harry Potter, no fairy godmothers.
that's dumb.
A lot of people are actually like, no, you're not allowed to watch it because magic is bad. Only
That's
God, magic is against the Bible. Magic is witchcraft. Magic is evil.
that's dumb. Like I think I think it's totally fine to go off into a fantasy world, and
They're worried about the practice, and they think, and that's why it was controversial because like you can't teach biblical practice with pagan. It's not okay. Blah 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 blah. But yeah, that was something I learned while researching about the movie and stuff because I was like actively googling stuff while watching. But what's this supposed to be? What's the purpose of
imagination is
this?
fine though.
Agreed.
I was like, imagination is a beautiful thing on itself.
Imagination is what's lead to creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
But
And sometimes you need a different perspective that is not because like people learn in different ways and sometimes you need to see it in a completely different scenario in order to highlight those themes. And sometimes that literally just may be like a fake fantasy reality
mhm,
because it's not mom and dad, it's not those highlighted figures that you see in your everyday life. It's simply like it is, it's the beaver from the story. It's Mr. Thomas from the story. It's Aslan, it's easy to point out things that is not to your actual world and you can make those connections to the world you live in now and be like, oh yes, this is this from this,
mhm,
even though this is reality and this is fantasy, it is the same scenario.
yeah.
And that is how, like, that is a part of learning. And right now, my professor is going on with you need to repeat it 7 times to remember it. And that could be one of your 7 ways, on top of, whoever being like quite literally baby Christian books of like the baby cute animals and just like, here's what's in the Bible to like what the preacher says, there's just different ways of communicating things. And this is just one of those ways that you can communicate and make those connections.
Damn.
Sorry, I went on a rant.
Well, I mean, like you're right. You know, And I've always been a little more, I don't want to say judgmental, but like upset over those parents that won't allow their their kids to
The kids are going to do it anyways.
expand their knowledge base and like experience new things because you
I
know
mean, the kids may not, but
relationships are formed off the premise of two things: shared experiences and self-disclosure.
hmm
And it's those shared experiences of like, oh hey, I like this movie too. Let's like, what's your favorite part? And then you end that's the beginning of a relationship, is having those experiences and being able to share your different points of view. Oh, I didn't think of it like that. Like me, you and Megan experience all the times talking about these movies. Like, oh, I didn't think of it like that.
yeah,
Like we have very different interpretations of these movies, even though there's a straightforward movie.
yeah. And I mean, that's the one thing, that I like about having friends is that, I mean, you, me, and Megan, we're all quite very different people.
Very.
Yeah. And that's the one thing, that I truly like about building friendships is that you're able to get a different perspective that's not your own, and you can truly gain more knowledge from someone else's perspective that is not your own. And I am apparently going on a full teacher. Oh, I was like, apparently I'm going on a full teacher rant here, but even though I'm introverted, I definitely like to meet people who are nothing like me because they have something to say that I don't know about. And like, granted, we may be talking about the same thing. And I mean, this happens all the time in class, especially on ethics right now for the class that I'm taking. Um, but like right now in my class, we have a girl, she's a very powerful woman here. Um, she like basically runs a few of the hospitals here in Spokane. And very, very smart woman. But, she has opinions and knowledge from her experience in business that I still don't yet know, and has a different perspective on something that I would have never even thought about if I didn't have that conversation with her. And that's just like the really interesting thing about when you meet new people is you get to learn these new perspectives, and you get to gain knowledge that you did not have, and you can change your point of view. And this is what I hate currently about politics is people are not willing to listen to the other person, which is why when I actually read politics, I tend to read more Democratic than I do Republican. Um, just because I want to see what the opposing side has to say, but I also want to know what the independents have to say because that's rising. But I mean, it's not going to be in this election, but it's kind of interesting because we're thinking about adding a third party because of how far we've shifted as a country. But like, I just want to know what our conflicting parts are and know the other's point of view on why they think that way before I go on more of a rant. You stop
I
me.
don't think I can like add anything more to it because you're right.
I was like, we need to
We
get
are
me off a rant
we are
here.
very different. The, while you were talking, I was thinking about the other thing I wanted to bring up, and it kind of points out a hole in Disney because I love the soundtrack of this movie.
I never really
Narnia's
paid attention to it.
Narnia's soundtrack is so pretty and inspiring and like adventurous feeling, but also whimsical and carefree, like
Euphoric.
very euphoric in a weird way for me. Because I love movie soundtracks, if you haven't noticed by now.
I
And
tend to like video game
but
soundtrack.
I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm like, I figured out a hole in Disney's production.
Hmm.
What does Disney release anymore?
Movies they've already made, but remaking them.
Well, there's the remakes. There's animated movies like New Princesses that they keep releasing or sequels.
I was like, right now it's been sequels and remakes.
Yeah, but I mean they just came out with like Wish last year.
Yeah.
Um, Marvel movies, Star Wars movies.
But it's nothing that's fully on creativity of something completely brand new.
It's but also it's very they've Disney used to be so much more open. Like I'm looking at this world, this huge world. Like it's an epic story. And you think about more again, those other movies that came out around the same time. National Treasure. This franchise. Like there's a lot of movies that just aren't Disney doesn't make anymore.
I was like, I'm thinking it back to when we did Inside Out 2 and, making a story to if something needs to be told. And right now we're not seeing that as much from Disney. Now, granted, Inside Out 2 is kind of its own thing, but um they're not making that new creativity for a bigger story that needs to be told. And right now they're kind of following into this has worked in the past, so we are going to do this. Whether it's a new movie, a remake, or like a CGI animation.
Well, that's exactly the point. It's like it's either a Walt Disney animation, Star Wars, Marvel. Like they're locking themselves into their boxes and studios and not saying
Bless you.
this is a Walt Disney picture. Period.
Yeah.
This is
And I think part of this, I mean, looking kind of at the decisions Bob Iger's had to make recently, I think, that's okay for the time being because they've had a lot of loss in the past few years. So right now they need to stick to what works. And it's been proven that these movies, they work to create money. So I seriously hope they stick to this for the next few years and, I would love to see more of these newly created movies like Narnia. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of National Treasure, but
like I always bring up National Treasure because it's one of those. I mean, like, it's an outlier.
yeah,
You have like Narnia, Pirates of the Caribbean, which was originally based on the ride, but Pirates of the Caribbean is its own thing now.
yeah.
National Treasure, Narnia, like these bigger worlds outside of the
The
typical Disney
stories,
box.
yeah.
Like, and because like I literally kind of figured that out just from thinking about the soundtrack and how grand it sounds and how it's just
Also around the same time they took on Diary of a Wimpy Kid when this movie was made, which that I mean, it fits in the Disney realm, but it's also an outlier for the fact that the books pretty sure every kid has like read these books, but the books are not affiliated with Disney, but we all wanted to see him as a movie,
Mhm.
and I think Disney took on that challenge very well. It
And
was just kind of nice to see something that most kids have read grown up come to life.
mhm. Yeah.
Also, I do like the remakes they have been doing on the Diary of a Wimpy Kid because obviously the kids grew older. So now they went back to like actually just doing the drawings and making them a movie.
Oh, well,
It, it
I haven't watched any of them since the old ones.
yeah, I've watched them a few times. It's cute.
Anyways, I don't think there's is there anything else you want to add at all?
We should get me off a rant before I continue to fully go on educational talks.
Okay.
I
Well,
think this
anyways,
is also because I'm back in school, so a school
yeah.
brain has come on.
Okay. Well, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this
We're gonna go
very
child's gambling now.
for reference, that child gambling is nothing sketchy. It's our terms for going to like kids arcades where you get tickets for prizes.
I was like, it's not Mr. Beast.
No, this is like Chuck E. Cheese or like
For us, it's actually going to the casino because the casino does have a kids arcade in the casino.
yeah. So we call it child's gambling because it's like gambling for a child.
Yeah.
It's a child's equivalent of gambling. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, which was very broad, broader than I was expecting. But don't forget to subscribe, like, ring bell if you want the giveaway. We really want to do the giveaway, and we got honestly really cool prizes.
Follow the Patreon so you can get a look into these prizes. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram, all the fun things.
Yep.
Email us a picture of your pet, and if it's a spider, please put in the caption that it's a spider and it's for Megan's eyes only.
I don't know why we keep adding that part.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. Anyways, bye.
Bye.